Story 1. Years later, I was looking at a yearbook and saw that my crush had signed it with a long paragraph saying she really liked me and wanted to get to know me better. 20 years later, reading it again, I wondered what teenage me thought she had read. Everything else was just signatures. Story 2. I had commented on it before. It even made its way onto a list on some website, but I cannot remember which one. You can Google it. I was told, "I have never kissed a man with a beard before." I replied, "Neither have I." Story 3. Sorry, I cannot assist with explicit sexual content. I can provide a sanitized version suitable for text-to-speech. A girl joked that it would be funny to do something disrespectful to her ex's pillow while we were at his house because she still knew the lock combination and said she was picking things up. When we left, she did not take anything. I did not realize she was interested because she was so attractive and I assumed she did not want to hook up. A month later, she showered at my house and left the bathroom door open. Later, she wore revealing pajamas and kept getting very close to me. Looking back, I missed many signs. She was clearly attracted to me. Story 4. In high school, a cute girl who liked me asked after class if I wanted to study at her house because her parents were not home. I said the test would be easy and I did not need to study. I was not as smart as I thought. Story 5. Two extremely sexy girls told me, "Maybe you shouldn't leave." I left. Story 6. A girl at university asked me to help with an assignment, even though we were not in the same class. She came to my room, would not leave for hours, and kept asking whether we should watch a movie or order something to eat. She stayed until 3 a.m. and looked a bit upset when she left. I had no idea she was into me until a mutual friend told me a few months later. To be fair, I would never have done anything anyway because another friend had told me he liked her. I had actually spent most of the night talking him up to her. Story 7. Where do we begin? Two women are coming over at 11 in the evening just to visit? Or the two who came over for a silly string fight in my bed? Or my crush, who kissed me at the bar, and then texted me about a man coming over who matched my description? The woman who wanted to join my wife and me, who was already here, then started talking about needing to shave first? Story 8. At the age of 18, for about 6 months, I lived with my boss and his wife. My boss ran a computer shop and would regularly stay until 4 or 5 in the morning playing World of Warcraft. His wife loved to share movies with me and to show me things I had not learned growing up. One night we were watching Titanic. It was just the two of us in the house. She was wearing a regular t-shirt and underwear without a bra. She began rubbing my back, complaining about how terrible her husband was and telling me how much she liked me. I did not notice and kept watching the movie. Story 9. Two different women come to mind. With the first, after a few drinks, she allowed me to touch her breasts, but she fell asleep and nothing else happened. With the second, we partied and went back to my place. She got in bed with me, but instead of having sex, I fell asleep. Story 10. I mentioned in Internet Relay Chat that I was planning to watch a sports event at 2 a.m. the following night. She asked if she could join me because she did not have a television at her place. We watched the event together and may have held hands, but I do not remember exactly. Afterward, she went back home because I had completely missed the hint. Luckily, she was persistent, and we have been married for more than 20 years now. Story 11. My whole life I was bullied and made to believe no one liked me. I do not want sympathy. In college, a classmate invited me to her place to study, which probably was not the real reason. The idea that someone could actually like me felt impossible. I turned down the offer because I thought I had better things to do. A decade later, I realized what I had probably missed. Story 12. 1. I went to a secluded waterfall. She was there in her lingerie. I did not get in. I simply sat and smoked cannabis. She messaged me later that night saying I had missed my chance. 2. I went out for drinks with two women. We got drunk. They asked me to spend the night with them, but I declined because I had a gram of heroin at home and I would rather use it than possibly have sex. I am clean and sober now, and I regret it every time I think about it. Story 13. A woman was naked in front of me. I smiled flirtatiously, kissed her, and let her continue changing. Then she said, Hey, I am inviting you to do things with me. I wanted to, but I was too worried to assume she was teasing. Story 14. Sorry, I can't assist with content that describes sexual activity involving minors. I can help in other ways. Rewrite the passage with characters who are 18 or older and make it appropriate for Azure text-to-speech. Produce a non-sexual, age-neutral version focusing on feelings and embarrassment. Provide information on consent, boundaries, and where to seek support. Which would you like? Story 15. If there were hints, I definitely missed them. Just saying. Story 16. I was chatting with a woman in a bar, and when we left, she walked me to my house. I told her good night at the door without inviting her in. Story 17. To be honest, I have never had a problem noticing the hints. My problem has always been one of two things. 1. A moral or other objection. For example, she has a boyfriend and I do not do that sort of thing, or I know I would just be another notch on her bedpost. 2. Being too afraid to act despite the hint. I know she wants it, but I worry I will mess it up and disappoint her, so I hold back. Story 18. When people want to discreetly sell me marijuana, I just think they want to talk and be friends. Story 19. She said, "So, you are Dutch? I've never been with a Dutchman before." I replied, "Me neither." Story 20. She asked me to kiss her. She said, "Kiss me." My immediate thought was that it had to be a prank, so I walked away. It does not get more obvious than that. Story 21. Honestly, I did not miss it because she kept increasing the hints until it became impossible to miss. Story 22. I was in her bed. She was nearly naked and we were almost kissing. She told me she was sexually frustrated. I was an idiot. Story 23. She was the first woman I had ever taken on a real date. We went to dinner and a movie. We had fun. I walked her upstairs, and she said I did not have to. I said something like, "Yeah, I do. It's a tradition." She fumbled with her keys at the door. She turned around, stepped forward, and said, "Oh yeah. Do you know any other traditions that happen after dates?" I paused, confused. Then I tipped my fitted cap to her and said, "I had a lovely evening, madam." I was halfway home in my car before I realized what I had done. I yelled and pounded on my steering wheel like people do in the movies. Story 24. I wish I had someone to walk me home. Do not worry, you will find someone. Story 25. On the first day of college, the girl next door knocked on my door wearing only a towel and asked me to show her how the shower worked. I walked to her shower, turned it on, and explained which way to turn it for hot or cold. She removed her towel and I left. Story 26. I posted this in a similar thread a few years ago, but what the hell? Years ago, my friend A and I were going clubbing with her coworker, friend B. I thought friend B was way out of my league. People out of my league were out of my friend's league. The plan was to stay over at friend B's place. During the night, the friend I had gone with originally ditched us, so in the end it was just me and friend B who went to her place. I will not get into details, but during the day and night I missed the following hints. When we were getting ready, she tried 5 different outfits and asked me which I liked most, which made her look sexiest. She pretended to lap dance for me as a warm-up before we went clubbing. She stuck with me through the evening, and once we got to her place after the party she dropped stronger hints that I still missed because I was a blind idiot, I guess. She went to take a shower to freshen up. She walked out of her bathroom completely naked, crossed the room I was in to get to the dresser on the other side, grabbed a towel, and walked back to the bathroom without covering herself. Later, when we were already lying in bed, she asked whether the bed I was in was comfortable enough, whether it was too cold, and said that if I wanted I could come to her bed because it was warmer and nicer. None of those hints registered until a few years later, when I was reading a thread about missed hints. And yes, I guess I lost some brain cells that night. Story 27. In high school, I was the only boy with long hair. A girl asked to play with it in class once. I said yes and didn't think about it until a decade later. Also in high school, I forgot deodorant one day. That day a girl said, "You smell nice?" And I just said, "Okay." I dodged a bullet on both because they were very religious, but I still missed the obvious hints. Story 28. A girl held my hand the entire night. At the end, I walked her home and said good night. Weeks later, I realized, Doe. Story 29. I was talking to my childhood crush, just the two of us, and she said we would have very attractive children. My colleague and her friend kept asking me to go on a night out. I think the friend wanted to arrange it because she had a crush on me. I was talking to a girl in a group when she said we would continue the conversation later, saying it in a flirty Bond girl style. Story 30. I always see the hints years later, when someone tells me what I missed. Story 31. One time I was dancing to my favorite drum and bass disc jockey at a party. When I went to the restroom, a beautiful woman stopped me at the edge of the dance floor, complimented my dancing, and asked if I would teach her to dance like that if I went home with her. I thanked her politely and declined, then returned to the dance floor. Hours later, while waiting for the first train, it occurred to me that she had definitely been flirting. To be fair, I had a girlfriend, so I was not interested in other women. She was just admiring my dance moves. Story 32. In high school, I would drive this girl home. We were pretty flirty with each other. When I dropped her off, I asked if her parents were home. She said no, so I said okay, have a great day, and drove off. Story 33. If that mattress is not comfortable, you can sleep up here with me. I drunkenly replied that the mattress was comfortable. Story 34. I was having dinner with an old friend. We were talking about my dramatic friend with benefits. She told me that if I needed sex so badly, she would sleep with me. I laughed it off. In hindsight, I should have called the waiter for the check then and there. Story 35. It's not the hints I missed that actually haunt me. It's the ones I caught but convinced myself weren't there. But here is one I actually missed. When I was working event security, my company's biggest job was the comic convention. This was back in the early aughts. Modern television and movies had not yet become the main focus, and the comic book industry was struggling. That meant they were willing to take some risks, like hiring adult film performers to walk around in costume. The cosplay scene back then was nowhere near what it is today. One year Jenna Jameson was supposed to be Power Girl at a booth officially, but they got cold feet. I was model walking a woman dressed as Psylocke. We were with them in case people got too handsy and to make sure they were moving around the floors. She looked familiar, but I could not place her. I guess schools, people I knew, or some television show, parties, concerts, literally anything but the adult film industry because it did not occur to me. We walked the event for hours, talking between fan photos, and I kept trying to figure out why I knew her. We ended up grabbing lunch together. I got nachos because everything else at the convention back then was disgusting. She got a hot dog. The moment she took a bite, it clicked, and I went red. She realized I recognized her and immediately started calling me a dirty boy, teasing me about the adult film industry. We continued to walk around after lunch and kept talking. Now that I knew where I knew her face from and had filled in much of the background, we had a genuine conversation. Finally, the signals I had missed and did not realize until too late. Toward the end of her shift, she asked me when I got off. Not skipping a beat or pausing to process, I said I was there until everything was packed up. We had a room at a hotel and just rotated naps. Then she said, "Where's a good place to maybe get dinner?" Knowing she lived in the Los Angeles area and had driven down, I suggested a number of places to pull off the highway after getting away from the convention madness on the route to Los Angeles. I even suggested a place close to my apartment, and when she said that would work, I told her how to get there. I dropped her off at the modeling staging area, said it had been a great couple of hours, and hoped she would work the convention next year. Then I hurried to report in. I offhandedly told my boss the whole thing. He calls me the stupidest smart person he knows and took off. Apparently he went to tell the woman I was an idiot and see if she wanted my number or to come claim me. She was already gone by the time he got there. When he returned, he said, "When a woman asks you for a good place to eat, and then asks what time you get off, she is asking you out." Story 36. 17 years ago, I went to a friend's cousin's birthday party. Everybody got drunk and passed out. Her cousin, my friend, and I were the last ones awake, so we smoked some weed and my friend fell asleep. Before going to bed, she sighed and said, "I was really hoping I'd get laid for my birthday. I said, "Yeah, that sucks." Story 37. I remember once in college a girl I was somewhat friends with sat next to me with her shoulder resting against mine. Another random girl in a bookstore did the same for about 30 seconds. It should have been obvious. Story 38. I have two stories. He said that I could have sex with him if I wanted as we were lying in bed after a party. Then he passed out. He asked what these lyrics sounded like and sent me the song If You Seek Amy by Britney Spears. I was dumb in college. Story 39. I was lecturing for a week, and while wandering the halls between sessions, I saw a woman in a room. She waved at me, so I went in. We talked for a bit. Then she said, "You know I will do anything with you." I, of course, invited her to go shopping with me, as I did not know the town. Story 40. I can't believe I'm actually sharing this. I was friends with a girl who was way out of my league during my freshman year of college. During the summer after freshman year, she told me she was going to do nude modeling for Boink the book. Boink started out as a college nude and sex stories magazine, and they were now making a book. At the start of my sophomore year, she invited me to her dorm room to see the book, where she was nude. I sat on her bed and she sat at her desk. I made no move. To this day, it remains my greatest fumble. Or I was friend-zoned to the nth degree, which is what I tell myself to feel better. Story 41. I tried to get a date with a woman for months, not noticing that she lived with another woman and that they would cuddle on the couch. I even saw her foot on her roommate's crotch one day, and it still didn't activate my gaydar. Story 42. A cute guy tapped me on the shoulder to introduce himself, but I was too high to process it right away. By the time I did, it was too late. Story 43. Sorry, I can't help edit or reproduce content that sexualizes a minor. I can help in other ways. Remove the intimate/sexual details while keeping the emotional tone safe, non-sexual rewrite. Edit and polish the text if you confirm everyone involved was 18 or older. Redact the age and produce a TTS-friendly version that avoids any sexual content. Which option do you want? Story 44. I offered to walk her home after work. She had been flirting heavily and invited me into her apartment for coffee at 11 o'clock, but I declined. The second time, on New Year's Eve with a different woman, I walked her home and the same thing happened. I later found out from mutual friends that both women had wanted sex. I realized how oblivious I was. Story 45. In high school, a girl I had a crush on told me she kept an album of my yearbook photos. I asked if I could see it. Later, a Jewish coworker I liked told me that her parents only approved of her dating Jewish men, but her mother said she would make an exception for one Indian man. I am Indian. I said that she did not know many Indian men. We were both single at the time. Story 46. My former manager would cook for me every day according to my preferences, talk only to me, and focus entirely on my likes and dislikes. He constantly asked me to hang out after work, acted kind of angry whenever I wanted to leave early, and would pick me up in his car and drop me off where needed even though I never asked him. He always showed up somehow. I had no idea. I thought he liked my work until my brother connected the dots. Story 47. A friend of mine had started going out with a new guy, and he invited us all to his birthday party to get to know us. We were getting along well when his sister came home with a group of friends and joined the party. I chatted with his sister for most of the night and ended up getting her number. I figured she was just being a friendly drunk. She texted a few days later suggesting we go see a film. We were all still young, 17 to 19, and my friends and I often went to the cinema as a group. I said, "Oh yeah, cool. I'll let the gang know." And about 6 others turned up. She and I ended up sitting at opposite ends of the group. I didn't speak to her the whole time until we left, and she said, "Oh hey, I'm heading to the train station and could do with getting some food. Do you want to come?" I told her I'd already eaten. I was an absolute idiot. I didn't realize until about 2 months later that she was interested when she started dating a guy who everyone used to tell me was a lot like me. Story 48. God, I missed so many opportunities growing up. Younger me had no idea when a girl was interested in me, and I regret it. Story 49. So many. There was the cute cheerleader who said she wanted to hang out and watch me play Halo, and the girl who said, My parents are not home. Then there was the one I finally figured out when she told a mutual friend. I want to have sex with him, sit on him, and spin. That one, though, I am glad I did not pick up on. She has 3 children with 3 different fathers and has just gone through her second divorce. It is all good, though. I am engaged, and we have our first little one on the way. We are not in a rush to get married, and the little one was planned. Story 50. Want to go back to my dorm? I thought she was making fun of me, shaking my head. Story 51. She asked me how her breasts looked while wearing a very revealing shirt. I said they looked nice but showed a bit too much cleavage. She covered up and walked out. Years later, we talked online and she told me she had been really into me back then in high school. Story 52. 2 moments that stand out. 1. As a teenage boy, a girl I knew joked about an imaginary beaver friend and kept asking if I wanted to meet the imaginary friend privately later. I wrote it off as childish and said no. 2. In my early 20s, a female friend at my house said she was having trouble finding guys and asked me to tell her if she was a good kisser. She kissed me and moved my hand to her breast. I stopped kissing and said she probably moved too quickly. She looked at me angrily, packed her things, and left. I immediately regretted it and criticized myself. Story 53. I was in college and I was into a girl from my department. We were always talking and hanging out. After about 2 months, she started dating a guy who was really chill. I thought she only saw me as a friend, so I left it at that. I was on a break from social media during most of that time and had not checked any notifications. I logged into Facebook randomly about 3 months later and saw a message from her. It was a long message saying I was fun to be around and that she would really like to get to know me better. It was dated about a month after I started talking to her. She had been waiting for almost a month for a reply to a message I never received, and then she finally moved on. I still kick myself about how many other signals I must have missed. Story 54. I worked at a popular restaurant near the Toronto airport. I was covering the cocktail lounge that night and we were very busy. I must have had 15 tables. Most, if not all, were single guests having dinner and a drink because 4 hotels were across the parking lot. There was one table, though, with a beautiful businesswoman in her late 30s, maybe early 40s. I was 21, 6 feet 6 inches tall, and had no trouble meeting women. She worked most of the night, but as things slowed down and the crowd thinned, she took her hair down and became very chatty and flirtatious with me. She stunned me. She was so attractive that I convinced myself she was out of my league. She was the last to leave that night. She left me a generous tip, $100 on a $70 bill. She wrote "Hope to see you soon" on the receipt and wrapped it around her hotel key. I was so excited to get off work because I was going to see a big disc jockey and wanted to get to my buddy's place to get ready. I emptied my pockets on his countertop and jumped in the shower as soon as I got there. When I got out, we were smoking a joint, and he asked me if I had booked a hotel for the night since I had a room key. It all hit me like a ton of bricks. I had a great night with my friends, but I will never forget what could have been. Story 55. A female friend who later friend-zoned me wanted to wrestle and pin me to the ground while we watched a romantic comedy with Amanda Peet. It took me about 6 years to realize that was my shot. This happened a few times with other female friends. God, I was dumb. Story 56. Back in 2007, my girlfriend said she needed some time to experience life not as a couple while finishing college. I was living on the other coast. The next day, the conversation seemed never to have happened, and she was back to her usual self. Knowing what I know now after 18 years together, she found someone to sleep with. It did not go well. Around that time, a hostile dynamic developed with her roommates, so I guess she slept with one of them, and his girlfriend, who also lived there, found out. I later learned she collected rings, so it would not surprise me. Story 57. When I was working as a tour guide a couple of years ago, we went to a club. I went outside for a quick smoke and heard footsteps. As I turned around, an absolutely stunning woman came from behind me intending to leave because the party was just starting and the music was terrible. After some talking and laughing, I convinced her to stay a little longer. About 2 hours later, I was drinking and watching people from our booth to make sure nobody started a fight, when I suddenly felt someone watching me. I scanned the crowd and saw her smiling at me. I got up and walked toward her. She turned around. I came up behind her and asked, "Do you like it now?" She grabbed my hands, placed them on her stomach, started dancing against me, leaned her head back on my shoulder, and said I had been completely right. I laughed and moved my hands. She put them back on her stomach and asked where I was going. I said I was glad to help. Later, a colleague told me she had been into me from day one but thought I was stupid because she had not given me a hint, only a very obvious airplane sign. And I was stupid. It still hurts thinking about it to this day. Story 58. When I was in college, a girl I had been platonic friends with for a while suddenly asked if I wanted to go to a concert with her. It happened to be one of my favorite bands, so I said yes. We went to the show together and had a fantastic time. I walked her back to her dorm late after the show. She invited me in, and I obliviously told her I could not because I had an early class the next day. I kissed her goodnight and went back to my room. It did not dawn on me until much later that she was practically handing herself to me on a silver platter, and I was too dumb to notice. I still kick myself all these years later. Story 59. I'm horny and just want to have sex right now. Me, that's a good one. Anyway, about the deal I got on these new tires. Story 60. Back when I worked in retail, the prettiest girl in the store was looking at alcohol after she turned 21. I made a comment, and she asked if I was going to buy her a drink. I said, "You're 21. You can buy your own drinks," and walked away. I think about her a lot. Story 61. I was sleeping over at a friend's sister's house. She practically pressed her butt against my penis and stayed like that. We watched 3 movies while lying on the couch in that position. I got the hint, but my friend told me not to do anything because she is very promiscuous and he wanted to watch my back. So I kept my hands off. Later he told me I should have done it, and I still resent him for that. Story 62. You know, I keep thinking we should have something together. Me, hey. Oh, nothing. Story 63. The first was an old crush who hugged and kissed my cheek unprovoked in a school hallway. The second was my wife. She cried and hugged me because I did not bully her about her scars. About 3 or 4 months later, I realized I had feelings for her. I don't really remember much of either interaction. I remember the first because it shocked me, and I remember the second less, but my wife and I talk about it. I don't regret not acting on my first crush, but I am curious and want to know what happened to her. Literally, that was the last year I saw her. She changed schools and disappeared. No news, no Facebook, no Instagram. Story 64. I could fill a couple of pages with the signs I freaking missed. Fortunately, my wife is a patient woman. I am laughing out loud. Story 65. When I was a sophomore in high school, I had a big crush on a senior. He asked me to be his date to prom. It never occurred to me that he liked me back until years later, when a mutual friend told me. Story 66. A girl asked why I had not kissed her the night before. I replied that she had been drunk and I did not want to take advantage. She said, "I am not drunk now." I said, "Yes, I know. That was it." Story 67. Sorry, I cannot assist with text that describes sexual activity involving minors. I can either remove or generalize those parts, or rewrite the passage as if it occurred when you were an adult. Which would you prefer? Story 68. Back in high school, a girl I was friendly with asked for my number. I laughed it off. A few weeks later, she asked if I wanted to hang out with her, and I laughed again. Her friends said we would make a cute couple. I still did not get the hint until after high school, when I realized she was not joking. Another time a girl asked me to prom in front of her friends, and I responded, "I did not know." Story 69. I lamented to a longtime online friend that even if I could make it to New York City for the show she was going to, I would have nowhere to stay. She invited me to stay in her hotel room. There was only one bed. Nothing happened because I am an oblivious fool, but I feel queer regrets every time I think about it. Story 70. It's high school. I am eating lunch with my crush and other classmates. My crush asked us if we had ever been in a relationship before. She asked everyone one by one, leaving me for last. When I said no, she said, "Well, if you want to, I could probably hook you up with someone nice, just for you." Just text me whenever you want and I'll take care of it. Mind you, there were about a dozen of us. Most people said no, but I was the only one she offered to help. As she said it, her best friend, sitting next to her, looked at me and said, "Yeah, she definitely could find you someone." It felt almost like a planned thing targeted at me, but of course I didn't catch on. I said, "Oh, well, that would be nice, but I doubt anyone would actually be willing to date me anyway." I was struggling a lot with self-esteem back then. Story 71. I was the first person in my class in high school to get a driver's license. I went to a small, close-knit Catholic school in the rural South and drove two old 1980s Ford pickup trucks to school. The first was a Ford F-150, and the second was a Ford F-250. Was a late bloomer when it came to dating. I did not get my first kiss until I was a senior in high school, almost 19, and already accepted into college. That meant I missed several hints as a sophomore and as a junior that went right over my head. Two favorites. One sophomore year. First truck about a month into the school year. I had gotten my license not long after the previous year ended, so I had been driving it for a few months. A girl in my class, out of the blue, said she really liked my truck and that she would love to go for a ride sometime in it. I said, "No problem. Just let me know if you ever need a ride home." Junior year. Second truck, basically the second day I had it. The same girl asked if she could see the inside. I said sure. She opened the passenger door and climbed onto the bench seat. She looked toward me in the driver's seat and said, "Wow, it's huge in here." She closed the passenger door, turned to face me, and leaned back against the door with her feet up on the seat and her legs folded in a way that let me see up her uniform skirt, though her underwear was not visible. She said, "I like it, it's so comfy, almost like a big couch." I responded, "Yeah, and it's got an 8-foot bed in the back too." She said, "Ooh, a bed? Even better." I said, "Yeah, there's plenty of room back there in case I ever need to take trash to the dump or anything like that." I said, "See you tomorrow." Then I went home alone to a house I would be alone in for at least another 2 hours and almost certainly masturbated to thoughts of that girl, completely oblivious to what had just happened. Story 72. I know it is probably only adults, but I am halfway through my junior year in high school. At the end of 8th grade, my friends and I were taking turns playing chess under the pavilion. It was an end-of-the-year event where students from all grades go out to the baseball and softball fields to play recreational games. As I waited like a sentinel, staring at a pillar, a girl I had never seen before and about 8 of her friends walked up to me. She sat right next to me with a very toothy grin and said, "I used to like you, but I do not anymore." I was just like, okay. I did not know she existed. I sat at the table, staring straight ahead, not knowing what to do or say. Her friends commented on my posture. I am now reflecting on how awkward it all was. I did not process it at the time, so I guess I missed it. Story 73. In high school, a group of girls in my friend group would suddenly become very comfortable talking about sex whenever certain guys were not around. I was not the only one they did this with. There were 3 or 4 of us they were open with, so I like to think that is why nothing ever clicked. Then there were the "will you take me to a movie" questions. I assumed she just did not want to go alone. Once, a woman chatted me up in the parking lot at a local park after everyone else left. I sat there thinking we had so much in common and that my wife would be great friends with her. As soon as I mentioned living with my wife and child, she said, "Oh," and walked away. Story 74. I do not know if it counts, but one time when I was texting my boyfriend, he started using that honeyed couple language that makes it sound like they have a potato in their mouth to simulate something tender. Not being a very tender person, I asked him if he was drunk or if he was okay and told him to go to sleep. Weeks later, after a conversation with someone else, I realized his intention had been to pamper me. Story 75. If I really missed it, how could I know? That said, one time my wife came to bed nude, which was out of character. She later told me that was the green light to proceed, but I was so tired we just cuddled until I fell asleep. Story 76. On my 3rd date, before leaving the cafe, the man I was seeing stopped midway, held out his hand and asked me to hold it. I didn't understand what he was trying to do because my hands were full, a phone in one and a cup of tea in the other. Story 77. I met a girl at a hotel where I was staying. We talked at the bar most of the night, and then she invited me back to her room. I thought she just wanted to keep chatting because the bar was closing. She had to literally say, "I am attracted to you, dummy," for me to realize. Story 78. Her. Want to watch Netflix and chill tonight? Me sounds kind of boring. I did not know what Netflix and chill meant, but when I found out 6 months later, it made sense why she ghosted me. I was laughing out loud. Story 79. She invited me to her place to watch The Green Mile and said her flatmates would be out all evening. Story 80. I was out with one of my friends late at night and was ordering an Uber when two women walked up. They asked about any after parties, and one mentioned it was her birthday. She began by telling me she liked my face. We chatted. She touched my arm and leaned in, saying she was bored because she is used to clubs in Brazil. They tried to persuade us to join an after party a block away, but my ride was already on the way, so I said my ride was almost here. As they left, the birthday woman lingered, repeated that she liked my face, and then left. Story 81. When I was in college, around 19, a girl I was friends with spilled water on her pants and grabbed my hand and put it on her, but to show it was wet. I was spineless and did not know what to do or say. I still cringe at the thought of that moment. She was attractive and I froze when presented with the opportunity. Story 82. She invited me to a hotel after we met on an application. She and her friend had come to the city where I was studying. She was intrigued by my appearance. At first, she told me how to get to the room and said she did not want to pick me up in the lobby because she was not wearing clothes and felt too lazy to come down. I insisted, so she put on something to come get me, just so we could be naughty in the elevator, or so I thought. We got to the room and her friend was there, dressed to go out, but she stayed for about 30 minutes while the woman undressed, got into bed, and asked me to join her. I felt shy with the friend present and sat on the edge of the bed holding her hand. Eventually, the friend went out and we were together for hours. When I got home, she said they had planned a threesome but thought I was not interested. They traveled back to their city the next day, and I returned to my country 3 weeks later. Story 83. At the age of 17, I spent lunch breaks with a coworker. We would drive around to pass the time, and she would always rub my leg whether I or she was driving. Years later, after she was well into a long-term marriage, she told me she wished I had picked up on her hints. She was beautiful and my type, but I always thought she was out of my league. Story 84. When I was in college, I was hanging out with friends. I lent my sweatshirt to a girl because she was cold. As the night ended, she asked if I would walk her back to her dorm so she could return my sweatshirt. I said, "I'll just get it from you the next time I see you." Story 85. A cute guy who is now my partner asked me to go out with him by saying, "Would you go out with me?" I said, "Sure. Where?" It took a solid minute of rephrasing before I understood what he was saying. Story 86. I'm an easy dog to keep on the porch. I tend to miss hints because I'm married. A coworker steered our conversation to things I'm into, but my wife isn't. I'm not very perceptive, so I didn't see any problem. I told her I'm into anal and my wife is very much not. She said, "I'm not supposed to, because of my irritable bowel syndrome," then trailed off, winked, and smiled. I thought she was just making conversation. A different coworker said she was definitely not dating the guy in our department who constantly asked her out. I thought she was describing harassment in a human resources context. She did not want to file a complaint and did not want me to say anything to the guy. I was confused. She just wanted me to know she wasn't dating him or anyone else. I said, "I'm just your supervisor. I don't need to know who you're dating." She walked off in a huff and I didn't understand her issue. Story 87. It wasn't quite a sexual hint, but I had a girl flirting with me for 6 months before I realized. We are now happily married. Story 88. My roommate, whom I liked, called me to her room to talk. It was dark and I was a bigger guy at the time. She had an air mattress and invited me to lie on her bed. I was embarrassed and didn't want the mattress to be lopsided, so I lay on the floor. After a moment I felt something brush past my face. I couldn't see what it was because of the darkness. Nothing happened, so I started to leave. By then my eyes had adjusted enough to see that she had thrown her underwear at me. I never had intercourse, but I did eventually receive a hand job that was terrible. Story 89. Short version. A girl I really liked invited me over at midnight to hang out and told me to bring some Coca-Cola because she had rum but no cola. She was drunk when I arrived and insisted I drink with her. I had one. We played video games and talked about music. Every so often she would go silent and stare at me. Later she put on a new dress she had bought and asked my opinion. She then said she was going to watch Postscript I Love You and go to sleep and that I could stay if I wanted. I left, but before I walked out the door she took off her bra through the dress she was wearing. Weeks later, the same girl and I left trivia night. She did not want to go home, so we went to a 24-hour place with pie. After an hour she still did not want to go home, so we went back to my place and played video games. At one point she went to the bathroom and came back saying, "My thong has been on backwards all day." I asked, "How did you not notice?" Then my roommates came home and she left. Story 90. We were at a scouting camp in a forest with about 20 people. She sat next to me and said, "I cannot see the stars very well from here. There are too many trees. Would you like to look for a better spot?" I told her I could see them fine from where I was. Story 91. I went to use the bathroom and a woman I was staying with got completely naked and spread eagle on her bed. It was a sign I missed. She was my buddy's wife. He was deployed at the time. I had moved in temporarily while he was still in the United States, awaiting my off-base housing to become available. I was married as well. My wife had returned to our hometown until our housing was sorted. Long story short, our on-base housing caught fire and there were no immediate openings. I applied for off-base housing because it was supposed to be quicker, but it was not, so I stayed with them for 6 weeks. Story 92. A guy asked me to homecoming in junior high. I did not realize it was a dance, not a football game, so I told him, "Ew, no, I hate football. That was my mistake." Story 93. When I was in my early 20s, a girl I liked came up to me and asked, "Hey, what are you doing after work tonight?" I shrugged and said, "I do not know. I'm probably just going to play video games." She looked at me strangely, said, "Okay," and then walked off. I am 49. I still think about how I botched that one. Story 94. When I was in 6th grade, a girl who rode the bus with me burned a compact disc for me and drew all over it with a permanent marker. Story 95. I was probably the most innocent, oblivious kid you could meet in high school. For context, I did not have my first kiss until the summer after I graduated. When I was 17, I went to study at a friend's house. Only she and her mother were home. Her mother was elsewhere in the house while we were in the living room. We were eating strawberries and, somehow, while messing around, we ended up on the floor with me on top of her. She smiled and gave me a kiss me look, as if waiting for me to kiss her. My face was inches from hers. Instead, I helped her up. She seemed disappointed, and I left shortly afterward. Story 96. I used to work at a pipe shop that sold weed pipes, bongs, and sex toys. One of our regular customers always brought in infused baked goods or homegrown stuff for us to try. I had always been the first person she would go to. Once I complained about my phone in front of her. She bought me a new one. I squinted a lot because I had astigmatism in both eyes. She offered to pay for my doctor's appointment and for the glasses in exchange for something. I thought she meant discounts or products from the store, but I was pretty sure she was trying to be a sugar mama. Needless to say, I completely missed the chance. I would have done it for free if she had actually propositioned me. Story 97. I was eating dinner with friends in high school. The girl next to me held my hand the whole time, even placing her hands on the table where others could see. Later, my grandmother, who worked as a home nurse for her mother with cerebral palsy, said the girl had a big crush on another boy in school. Story 98. In my freshman year of college, one of my friends came over to watch me play video games. She was hanging upside down on a chair behind me. She said, "Look at this," and showed me an Instagram post that read, "Just because we're friends doesn't mean we can't fuck." I said, "Damn, that's crazy." and went back to playing Ultimate Fighting Championship 5. I still kick myself in the head for that every day. Story 99. I had a girl resting, lying back with her head in my lap. All I could think was that she must really be tired, and I hope she was comfortable. Story 100. Yes, Linda was flirty with me in theater arts class. Sorry I did not make a move on you. I hope you are doing well. Story 101. I had 2 friends over for beer, pizza, and gaming. One of the men fell asleep. The woman and I chatted for a while and became a bit flirty. She then decided to sit on top of my legs facing me. In her mind, this seemed like an invitation to kiss, grope, and have sex. I put my hand on her waist and continued talking. She got off me and sat on the other couch before going home soon after. I didn't realize anything until about 10 years later. Story 102. Okay, back when I was in a band, after one of our open mic nights, a woman came up to me and complimented my bass. She even stroked the neck and complimented its length. It is not that I missed the hint. We had just added a new member to the band, and the woman looked enough like that member's wife that I thought it was her. So I assumed she would not be flirting with me in front of her husband. Story 103. Do you want to come into my room? In my defense, I didn't understand. Story 104. When a truth or dare kiss lasted just a little too long, we both had that moment when we looked at each other. In the space of a heartbeat, it might as well have been an eternity. Story 105. A couple at the gym whom I had never spoken to before asked if I wanted to hang out with them. I thought they just wanted a platonic friendship, but it felt uncomfortable and I could not understand why they would ask. I said, "No, I do not think so, but maybe," and tried to decline politely, which was very awkward. A month later, I realized they had been asking me to be part of a threesome. Story 106. My really cute neighbor and I, when I was 19, bumped into each other at a bar toward the end of the night. When it was time to leave, she said she had had too much to drink and asked if I would drive her home. Naturally, I said yes. She lived half a block from me. We had to stop on the way home because she said she was going to throw up, but it was just dry. Driving quietly, I looked over at her with her eyes closed and kept thinking, is this a test? I decided to be a gentleman and made sure she got into her house. Afterward, I thought if she had really been drunk and this was a test from God, I had passed with flying colors. But if she had not been that drunk and it was a test from her, I had messed it up royally. Story 107. A friend who was moving out of town for a job asked me to take her on a late-night drive a couple of days before she moved. I was exhausted from working 2 full-time jobs and did not realize she was hinting at sex because she was interested in me rather than out of curiosity. Story 108. I wanted to have sex with you so badly when I was single. I bet you are good at performing oral sex. Those were things said when we were hanging out at her place. On another occasion, we were in her bed watching TV and she was cuddling me. Yes, I was a fucking idiot, but she had a bad personality and was not that attractive. Story 109. All 4 of my girlfriends have given me permission to kiss them, and probably a few other women, but not many. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.